There were no speeches, no applause, just a notification on the screen. Your vote has been processed, but you hadn't voted. And something deep inside knew that this wasn't a mistake. It was an election where no one chose. Everything changed the day voting stopped feeling like a ride and started appearing as just another setting in the configuration menu. At first, it was subtle. A change in the interface, a new button, a privacy notice that no one read. It was the year 2052, year of the presidential election, in what some still insisted on calling representative democracy, even though only the facade remained. But there were no longer rallies, nor banners, nor real polls. Voters did not ask questions, candidates did not give answers, and elections were no longer elections. They were calculations, except for one, Walter Dean Murdock, 71 years old, born in Avery, North Carolina. He never allowed a system to know him better than he knew himself. He lived alone, paid in cash, kept clippings, and every 4 years, without fail, he walked to the old school in his county, requested a paper ballot, marked his vote, and left. Not because he believed in the candidates, but because he believed in that simple act. From a very young age, he distrusted contracts with fine print, clicks without questions, systems that promised order in exchange for total surrender, but he never pressed accept or signed terms he didn't understand. Walter never used social media, not even at the beginning when MySpace, in 2003, turned profiles into showcases and taught the world to edit their identity. Not even when Facebook, in 2004, promised connection but began to map emotions, track reactions, and predict friendships before they happened. Much less with Twitter, in 2006, when it reduced human complexity to 140 characters and trained an entire generation to respond without listening. Not when Instagram turned beauty into currency, nor when Snapchat made memory expire, nor when TikTok turned time into a flash. Each network refined something, desires, impulses, decisions. Walter wasn't there, but the world kept moving forward without him. While there was talk of freedom of expression, the platforms were learning to predict, to persuade, and to condition. Networks, born to connect, discovered something more profitable than attention: will. First, they understood what you liked, then what you desired, and finally, what you were going to decide before you knew it. This is how the CIVIX project was born. Unity Core Systems, together with 5 global platforms, created an electoral inference network that eliminated the need for the act of voting. There was no need to register, move, or sync anymore. The system analyzed everything: history, emotions, relationships, and notified you with artificial courtesy. Your vote has been processed. Many accepted it with relief, as if it were a natural evolution of absentee voting. Others tolerated it for convenience or routine, but not everyone. There were always those who distrusted the act of delegating their voice to a machine, even though the system presented it as inevitable. And Walter was different. Not only was he distrustful, he was never read. While many skeptics still left digital traces, even if they tried to resist, Walter was one of the few who remained completely out of CIVIX reach. He was not invisible. He was unpredictable, and that made him an impossible element to classify for the system. Until November 5th, year 2052. 5 minutes after the polls closed on the West Coast, the winner was already known. Officially, he won in more than 42 states by over 80%. A result so perfect, it seemed designed. Miles of citizens, without knowing each other, began to feel the same suspicion. That was not the vote they would have chosen. Not consciously, not emotionally, not freely. The dystopia was cleaner, more elegant, more brutal. The system had been so efficient that it no longer needed to lie. It didn't need to convince you, just make you feel that you agreed. There was something profoundly wrong in the way the system said, "This is what you wanted." Because deep down, everyone knew it wasn't true, and many believed it, but not all. On the fringes of the network, for months already, a story was shared like a spark impossible to extinguish. Walter Dean Murdock, the man who never gave up his will, the only one the system could not deny. It was a legend, myth, a name whispered as a symbol. And when CIVIX proclaimed the perfect victory, his story resurfaced like a lit fuse. It all began with isolated demonstrations. In small squares, scattered voices raised improvised signs, written with anger and hope. They demanded something simple, yet forgotten: the right to decide. The first 3 days, local governments tried to quell the demonstrations, but by the end of the week, the protest was already national. In every state, millions of people were in the streets, and the tension became unbearable. For more than 15 days, the cities collapsed, not due to vandalism, but because of presence. Entire families marched with handmade signs that said, "I want to choose for myself." The technological powers did not want to give in. The federal authorities spoke of order, stability, national security. But every day more people joined in the squares. More states declared their disobedience. More municipalities refused to validate the results. The country was on the brink of an explosion, not ideological, existential. And then, the system gave in. 15 days later, the election was officially annulled, not due to errors, but because of the unbearable weight of collective doubt. The Congress, cornered by social pressure and the fear of a civil war, announced new presidential elections for a month and a half later, on paper, in ballot boxes, with lines, with waiting, with intention. For the first time in decades, the people truly voted. Walter did not give speeches, did not lead anything, but millions walked to their polling stations, as he had done all his life, in silence. Because what systems fear most is not violence, it is that someone simply remembers they can still say no.